Today on the Adonit Show, we're delving deep into the tangled web of media metrics and the crucial concept of incrementality in advertising. Join Pesach Latin and his guest, David Pollet, as they debunk outdated metrics, navigate the evolving landscapes of AI and e-commerce, and drop insights that'll overhaul your ad strategy playbook. Get ready for a wild ride through the metrics maze. Because understanding impact isn't just about numbers, it's about making every ad count.
Deserve to win when it matters most. Facing multi-billion-dollar bet the company litigation? No problem. That's why we're here. Troutman Amin, LLP is a true legal powerhouse.
Yeah. Welcome to the Adonit Show, where we slice through the marketing bologna and serve it up more spicy than a jalapeno on your NFT nachos. I'm your host, Pesach Latin. Today, we're wading into the treacherous depths of media metrics with the sultan of statistics, David Pollet. We'll explore whether or not you can truly gauge ad effectiveness, or we're all just throwing darts in the dark. Rate yourself for some blunt truths, a sprinkle of gags, and perhaps even a light bulb moment or two. All right, give us the scoop, David. How are you really doing? Any unexpected plot twists in your day so far?
Today specifically? Actually, no, today's been pretty good. We got to the bus on time, which is always a plus, and then got in and it's run pretty well. But that's anomalous in this business, I will say.
So what's monopolizing your brain space recently that you think our listeners might find either terrifying or like?
Just in general? Gosh, I don't know if it's terrifying, but one thing that I can't wrap my mind around is that, we've taken one of the world's worst and most independent identifiers, the cookie. We've demonized that, and yet we're happily handing over our biometrics like cupcakes left and right.
Right.
It feels to me like we've got the wrong demon, right? So that's something I give a lot of thought to. So
let's go straight and dive into the deep end. Incrementality is touted as the holy grail of advertising measurement. Was there a light bulb moment that made you realize this wasn't just another industry buzzword, but the North Star for all your ad endeavors?
You know what? It's not really quite how it happened. I mean, I've always loved this sense of getting to the truth of which advertising dollars were driving value, right? Both first as a marketer and then second, serving more on the marketing analytics and technology side. But the light bulb moment for us really was that the measurement solutions in market, one, didn't serve the media practitioner, and number two, were in no way, shape, or form applicable to retail media and in commerce. And so, our moment was, can we solve for both of those two things? Can we take the person who decisions the dollars and give them some insights at the pace and granularity that's of use to them? And can we do this in a space that the traditional tools just aren't built to solve for?
What about you personally? When they were interviewing you for CEO, was there like a moment like, I want to work for this company?
Well, yeah, there was, but this company didn't do that then. Right.
Oh, okay.
So this is a complete pivot. I brought in a new team. What the company did incredibly well was they were trying to be the operating system to e-commerce, which I think is one of those things that will exist eventually, but the first company that tries it isn't going to get it right.
Right.
And what that meant was they were taking in all the possible data you could get. I mean, we have landed costs for 70% of our clients. That's hard information to get out of clients. All of the inventory, all of the sales across all the marketplaces, all the sales from online to offline. There's a bunch of data that they integrated really well and they automated it. The problem was they were servicing about 5 to 10 different groups within an organization. And when I came in, I just decided at the size and scale that we should put all the wood behind one arrow. And that's where Incremental came from. And we had this incredible moat of amazing engineering and automation around the data collection and normalization. So we built the insights on top of that.
Okay, so break it down for us like we're 5 or maybe just a very savvy 48-year-old. What's incrementality about in the ad world? Is it the philosopher's stone of advertising? Or are we just spinning our wheels?
So I think we should start with what incrementality is, right?
Okay.
Incrementality is this concept of measuring whether or not a consumer would have transacted or purchased. I don't want to do the double negative. Let me say that another way. Incrementality helps you determine if an ad actually compelled the consumer or contributed to the decision to make a purchase or a transaction, right? It's truly understanding, did exposure to that ad hit me on the way to make that purchase? Or did exposure to that ad actually make me say, you know what? I'm going to give Nike a try. I'm no longer an Adidas man, right? That would be an incremental outcome. An ad actually compelling someone to transact with a brand. Do I think it's the Holy Grail? Yes, I do. Do I think it's easy? No. There are academic definitions of it, and they rarely apply to the real world media. And so the solutions are a happy sort of set of concessions on both sides. Right.
So why do you think incrementality is critical for advertisers today?
Well, I think that if you look at the environment, and it's different for every advertiser, so that's kind of nuanced, but like take Hershey's right now. Have you been tracking coca beans? Right? Like they're very strange, right? For costs. And so understanding the incremental impact of your advertising will let you know what advertising you can cost if you need it. You can cut if you need to cut back costs. It also will help you understand the places that you actually can pour more octane, more investment, so that you can scale your business efficiently. And, I think that it actually makes the economy go around. I think it's often couched around the efficiency of the advertising dollars that it's powering, but really good advertising drives really good commerce, and there's sort of a domino effect throughout the economy. So getting it right, it has a much bigger effect, right? And I think it's truly important for brands.
How did you, have you ever had to convert a skeptic to your faith? And what was your trump card?
I don't know that I have a simple trump card. I've definitely had to convert some skeptics. In fact, this has been more difficult than, say, doing, other forms of incrementality measurement in other mediums, right? Where the ground was already plowed, for most folks. When you came into the commerce space, a lot of the folks actually came out of merchandising and commerce, right? They didn't come out of media. And so they believed very, very much in, well, Amazon says that they were exposed to this ad, so therefore it's attributed to this sale, or Walmart says so, or whoever. And so compelling them to believe that took a series of use cases and often just conversations, breaking things down real simply, like, hey, if I was handing a coupon for milk out to people who were on their way into the grocery store to get milk, did that coupon drive a conversion to the milk? Right? Maybe it got you to shift brands. I don't know. So those kind of lines of questionings, just regular old logic.
Are you finding that a lot of brands people are not as loyal to brands as they thought they were?
I'm finding that the barriers to attack that loyalty and that brand equity are lowering every day. And, people talked a lot about this when search came out. Right. Suddenly Joe Lender could sit next to Bank of America, right? Like, I remember when you couldn't even, when I was running digital for B of A, and everyone was buying actually our branded keyword as part of their phrase searches, right? And so that actually does lower the barrier to entry. It puts you, I think that e-commerce is providing a similar effect, right? So, just take like something like electrolyte companies out there right now. A little while there was Gatorade. There were a couple of huge ones owned by huge conglomerates. And there was a very, very effective push done through e-commerce, and some very large brands grew up out of nowhere. And they did that because they could actually afford to bid their way onto what you call the shelf. It was very hard for a small brand to get on a shelf in Walmart, in Albertsons, in Kroger, when you only had a physical shelf. It's simply easier to get onto the digital shelf, and the digital shelf now accounts for a lot of the sales, right?
Right. So let's talk. Let's get a little technical. I'm actually curious. How do you actually measure incrementality without getting lost in a sea of data?
Yeah. Sea of data isn't the biggest challenge for us. I think the biggest challenge is a lot of retail media doesn't allow for traditional approaches to incrementality measurement, right? Like, so typically incrementality, if you take the academic definition of it, you have to have a test and you have to have a control, right? There's a lot of religion around how you define the control. But let's just assume you have a control that is acceptable to people, whether or not you run a placebo or you simply ensure that you do geographic control and you don't expose one geography of two like cities. There's a myriad of different ways that you can do a testing control. You can't do that on a lot of the shelves. And a lot of the advertising isn't really advertising, it's merchandising. We were just talking about it. It's a response to a keyword that someone searched. They're not going to let you serve 10% of the visitors an ad for, breast cancer awareness, right? And so as a result, to get to incrementality, we have to use other methodologies. We have to do things like synthetic control groups that you can use microsegmentation and look at exposed and non-exposed within the safe havens. We have to drop the spend to zero, then triple the spend to get a sense of impact of the advertising. So we're pulling a lot of different toggles that in a perfect environment where true incrementality testing was available would not be the way that you would go. But in this environment, it's the only option. And we think we have the most creative approach to it. And we spend a lot of time running statistical confidence testing.
So what is a perfect environment? Is there like a technology you wish you could invent that would make it more perfect?
I don't think that you're going to find it in anything where you're going to start replacing the shelf space with placebos or holding it out. I do think that you could do geo testing if the providers enable that, and they don't enable that right now, right? So it's impossible for you to say, okay, we're gonna bid up these placements in Philadelphia, but we're just simply not going to do it in Seattle because for whatever reason we think those are two like cities. I'm not suggesting they are, right? So
Right.
some of it is the owners of the media space aren't providing the tools that would traditionally be available to someone within, say traditional digital media. But on the other hand, that was very easy in digital media, but the identifiers were shit, right? And here, the identification is actually pitch perfect. So there's always a trade-off, right? Like, I've got a better test design that my stats professor would 100% buy into, but I'm using an identity layer to pair together cookies and maids at about 60% accuracy and 32% effective coverage. Which is better, right? And so no, there's not a perfect technology. There's not one that I miss. I like the problem and figuring out how to do it. And then I like having data scientists on the team that are just rigid about have we achieved and compelled ourselves to believe in the statistical accuracy of this approach, right? That's what I love, getting it past them. And even I, in my role in the company, cannot pass that barrier, right? That is an impenetrable. It's like, the old, the way a lot of newspapers used to be broken up, where there's just, you can't force through a story on the basis of an advertiser's spend, right?
Right. Are most of your advertisers in the CPG space, or is it a wide variety?
The company that we started with was huge in health and beauty. I mean, I think they had most of it. So we started there. We've moved into CPG, and actually now we've moved into some other verticals. So we've got technology. We really want to get into pet care, but we haven't gotten the footprint that we need to make a compelling argument.
Are you tracking mainly offline or online purchases?
Mostly online purchases. Really, we've built our system around speed and granularity. So it's about what data can we automate bringing in.
Right.
And then we try to get as much of sort of the external influencers as possible. And, the things you'd expect, macroeconomics, weather, natural disasters, all that crap. But we try to go a little bit farther and get our hands on some sense of the offline media. Influencers now are huge, right? They much bigger impact than they had, say, 7 years ago. When I was doing this in a different form and fashion, but we focus on how do you change your retail media outcomes.
What would you say is the single most important thing advertisers should understand about incrementality? Is it a magic bullet or just part of a broader arsenal?
It's part of a broader arsenal, right? So I think this is a really big mistake. And honestly, I think it's the fault of our community, the measurement community. The measurement community believes that what you tend to find is most solutions either look at the long-term impact of things or the short-term impact of things. And depending on which group you talk to, they would actually distribute the spend very, very differently, right? And sitting at the middle of that are actual business decisions. And so let me give you an example in e-commerce, like a tactical one. I might discover that you have more incremental return on investment from pushing one specific product on one specific marketplace than another, but you might have a bunch of inventory sitting somewhere else that you need to move. You need to move sales, not grow market share, right? You might believe that you're entering a growth market where it's significantly or more expensive to sell your children's painkiller than your flagship, adult painkiller. That's important, strategic, and you know that there's innovation coming down the road. When you talk to certain measurement folks, they believe that you should push the investment decision into the activation platforms and they should just do it. I think we should be an input to the broader decision, but there should be other decisions that get ensembled together and influence the actual outcome. We just want to give reliable, consistently accurate read on this is how much money you will get back for the money you put in here. You decide the strategy as an advertiser.
Let's talk evolution or revolution. How has the idea of effective media measurement changed since you started in the industry?
You know what? It hasn't. That's the thing, right? Like, I saw you worked at ClickZ. So, you know where I learned what CTR meant?
Right.
Andy Borland was my first boss.
Oh, wow.
I was at Andover.net. He was the 6th employee. I was the 8th employee, right?
And
he taught me
a
what
long time ago.
This gray is real. But he taught me what CPM meant, and he taught me what CTR meant. And back then, click-through was the magic metric, right? I mean, that was it, click-through rate. I was going to keep web trends as an advertiser or lose them based on getting over 0.5% of click-through. There was no other metric, right?
Right.
And then it was click conversions because that's all you could pass into the tag. And then view conversions came out, and suddenly, every campaign in the world was profitable, right? Because all you had to do was buy bottom of the DOM, never going to be viewed ads. It was going to overwrite the cookie, and it was going to win the attribution game every time.
Right.
My point is, today, we're battling against the next new age of metric, at least within commerce, which is ad attributed at Amazon.com. Walmart's got another flavor of it. But consider this. A lot of those ads, somebody has to have done a branded search, and in some instances, they've literally searched for the name of the SKU, and they respond to the ad. That is an ad attributed sale. That's a different flavor of the same dog shit, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
what's an outdated metric you want to get rid of? Like, just put on an iceberg and say bye to. Besides click-through rate.
Click-through. I mean,
besides click-through rate.
Oh, that's the fun one to pick on. I don't know. I wish that exposure count. Well, okay. First of all, let's kill GRPs for forever.
Okay.
Right? Because they've been masking as a metric within TV as a metric of reach, and they're not. If you ever actually look at what a GRP is, it has nothing to do with reach, right? But after we kill GRPs, let's go down to exposure and get to reach and frequency. I think reach and frequency have been the metric in minimizing the frequency required to achieve the outcome that you desired. I don't think that's changed in marketing forever, right? But we always have these intermediate metrics that are easier to track and get to. And those are what we report. And so those are what we attach ourselves to. And once you do that, you tend to chase the metric and you forget about the outcome that you're looking for, right? So I'd like to kill all of them. I believe very strongly in reach and frequency, though. And I believe that to do that effectively, you need to have some sense of overlap. And I believe that that's been ripped away from us with privacy. So we've got some real problems, right? I don't know how we're going to solve for that.
Okay, so your current gig at Incremental, how does it stir up the data science pot differently than your past escapades? Did you bring a flamethrower to a bonfire?
No. You know, it's interesting. There was, when you and I were talking about potential questions, one of them was, where do you want to be in 5 years? I want to be working with the same people I'm working with right now. No matter what we're doing, I just want to work with this crew again. And what I think is different is there's a constant and healthy debate about what is a problem for engineering and what is a problem for science. What I mean by that is there are a lot of things that were just data engineering and data science problems back in the day that now can be automated, right? And you still have to be in the loop. I don't think there's an to media measurement yet, but we're getting closer and we're getting faster. And I'm watching engineers and data scientists partner closer and closer and closer, and that's giving you speed, granularity, and accuracy. We've actually changed the way you do measurement. We're not even descriptive anymore. We provide the descriptive analytics, meaning the forward-looking, because clients are accustomed to receiving that. But our engine is really, we're so fast, and we make changes so quickly, and we measure them. We're a hell of a lot closer to Netflix or Spotify, right? We're trying to see, did we get it right? Oh, we got it wrong. Good supervised learning, right? Like teach the algorithm, you're not predicting this right. And so we're getting progressively smarter about our predictions around the outcomes of your media investment. And retail media lends itself beautifully to that because even a mediocre or a medium-sized advertiser, I didn't mean mediocre at all, has thousands of campaigns. So it's signal, which is great. That's what I love, right? And I don't know if that's a flamethrower or a bonfire or a forest fire, right? What I know is it's so cool to see people that smart with different disciplines, cats and dogs living together happily, right? And I love it.
That's great. Do you have a tale where traditional media measurement went off the rails and you guys came in like a superhero?
No. We're not solving for traditional media. What we're doing is we're taking it in so that we understand the influence.
I meant traditional media measurement.
Oh.
The old-fashioned way of measuring things. I'm sorry?
Just in general? I mean, not from this company?
Like you had a client who says, we're going to use these traditional ways of measuring. You guys just came in and proved them wrong.
Oh, we do that all the time, right? We crush anybody who's using a traditional MMM and trying to apply it to e-commerce and to retail media. And here's why. And we've done that, by the way, with the testing folks too. So let's get real basic. What the testing folks do is they run a test in the places that they can. That gets them to the incremental impact of a media placement, right? And then they factor that and they say, from now until the end of all time, this delivers a 2.2 return on investment, right? You're talking about placements that are nested between competitive pricing, promotions, seasonal offers, changes in placement on the page. All of those things are changing dynamically hour by the hour. And people are taking what happened on Thursday in January as the law of how this placement performs, when on Thursday in January, there were no competitors on the page. Nobody was running a buy one, get one free. I was 4 placements higher on the page. All of those factors really matter. And then the MMMs come in, right? And they basically say, hey, if a rooster was crowing at the same time that your sales went up, never kill the rooster, because the rooster was crowing when your sales went up. They're doing straight correlation, and that's not good either, right? So I don't have like a specific client to tell you the tale of because we really don't break the fact that we're not allowed to mention logos in any of the contracts we have, but I can tell you that we have come in, and in the best case scenario, we haven't crushed the MMMs and the testing people. We've partnered with them. And we said, this is the area that we specialize in. We want your inputs. We want your MMM norms for this client. And here's what we're going to give back to you. And we built a better system, right, for the client.
Does the industry have a correlation problem?
Yeah. Don't you think so?
Oh, of course. We like to say that, as you mentioned, the moon rises on Wednesday, so on Thursday everyone bought donuts.
Yes, exactly. So,
someone will find a way that's logical and present it.
Agreed. And that is probably one of the hardest parts of watching sort of the larger players that are open sourcing models for measuring your media. Most of them are just like really fast econometric modeling, and it's really mired just in correlation. And I think there's some really cool engineering in there, and there's some really cool sophistication, but I think it doesn't come with the warning label that it should come with.
Right. So what are some big fairy tales or fables that you've debunked about media quality along the way?
One is that it can't be changed, right? So there are definitely placements within retail media that can have very low incrementality. And oftentimes running something unexpected drives a lot of incrementality. So people are searching for a specific product, but there's another product very close to it. I'm thinking of a very specific advertiser, but I don't want to give them away. And we've swapped in the opposite of what the consumer was looking for. And actually, not only did sales spike, but incremental sales spiked. And so, we sort of see this sense of, is this good or is this bad? And that's not it. It's, is it performing at this moment or not? And what can you change? Right? Like, that's the big question. And the sort of the bad thing and the good thing about retail media is a lot of the time the investment isn't decided by the person who's going to be making the media decisions. It's decided during joint business proposals. So I'm going to take a brand that we're not working with right now, Hershey's. Hershey's might do a deal with Walmart, and as part of that deal, they're going to put $30 million into Walmart's retail media. Now you have to figure out, are we going to throw it away because we don't think it works? Is that cost of doing business? Or can we figure out how to make this super profitable? Right? And if you take that approach, you tend to learn a lot of things you wouldn't have otherwise learned. And, when you think of doing this for display media where it's like, shit, it's not working, move it. There's an ocean. We only need a puddle and we've got an ocean of opportunity for spend. So let's just move it along the way. Here we're having to learn how to make the environment you're in work. And I kind of love it. I think it's cool. And I think that lastly, I'll say is, I actually think that the Walmarts and the Amazons, so I'm not picking on them, they are providing a tremendous amount of insights and data and tools, and most advertisers aren't leveraging. Right? There's just a lot to be mined. So I don't know if that answered your question.
How do you see AI and machine learning redefining the chaos of media measurement in the next 5 years?
I'm not touching the AI to be right now. I'll take a pass. I think the machine learning, which is obviously part AI, but I think that automation is really cool. I think you run the risk of inaccuracy at times, but automation can speed up a lot of tasks that used to take a long time, frees you up to do more of the harder, more complex thinking. I think that AI is increasing in intelligence, but I don't think that we're really close to the place where, LLMs will be running your media optimization. And I've heard, lots of people ask about that, but we're not reaching for those methodologies until they reach out and find us and we see a reason, right? So I'm not trying to get my super smart chatbot about your performance up tomorrow. It seems like a really shitty diversion, right? Resources.
Sounds great. Mixing metaphors here, but if e-commerce and ad tech were a celebrity power couple, who would they be? Jay-Z and Beyonce of the digital world, perhaps? But seriously, how did you pinpoint the intersection of these two as critical for Incremental's mission?
God, we got to think of one where one's moving in the direction of the other. Man, I have kids. I don't have time to watch movies anymore. So, other than I really know the Avengers. But I don't know. Here's what I'll say. They're getting closer every day. The SKU-based model is infiltrating the traditional media types. The repository of first-party data at scale that is represented by the retailers is making a play at replacing the absolute crap to begin with behavioral data that was driving most of the targeting decisions within programmatic. And I think it's going to be somebody, you pick a celebrity that had, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. There you go. I think they're going to live happily ever after. It's going to be a long and lasting marriage.
Was that Overboard, right?
Yeah. She throws his tool thing over the side and gets amnesia or something like that. I can't remember, but you get it. I think there's a lasting marriage here, and I think there's goodness, and I think that was as the targeting mechanisms move upstream in media types where you can actually influence sort of the heart, as opposed to just putting buy type ads out. It'll be a very cool marriage.
Any old school tactics that still hit the mark?
Well, so I don't want to get specific to retail media, but I suppose it fits everywhere. I've believed this for a long, long time. And, you look at my background, I've pushed programmatic a long time. Context matters, mindset, right? So I'll take you an old school tactic. Yahoo would always push their email on you.
Right.
Any buy you did, they'd be like, you got to buy some banners and email. This is so obvious, it's stupid, but I would negotiate they all had to be on the log off page because the person was done doing whatever they were doing when they were seeing that ad. That's context and where the person is in their day, right? And I miss some of those contextually targeted ads in general. At Lending Tree, and, trust me, if our advertising didn't work, we didn't make payroll in the early days. We were throwing long on the advertising and hoping to make it back on QFs. Figuring out places that people were honestly, truly researching and lower on the intent to get, a loan, or at B of A, a checking account. They're close to moving. They're not just contemplating moving back when that was a trigger for checking accounts because there wasn't that much on national banks. That context was so cool. And I believe that programmatic has made us all lazy. And we think we're just targeting these data segments. And we're not mining for the contextually relevant places as well or as hard.
Do you have any interesting war stories where emerging e-commerce and ad tech gave you unexpected insights? Was it like a plot twist worthy of a tech thriller?
Yeah, I came in and the e-commerce people didn't have any neutral measurement at all. Most of the
why do you think that is? Laziness or
no? I think
just
it
got used to the.
Fast. Look at how fast retail media grew, right?
No,
I don't
everything's
think
retail media.
But there was no neutral measurement, right? And we came in and we were kind of cocky, right? We're like, we've seen this playbook. We're just going to bring it over here. And the plot twist was we didn't know all the things that we didn't know about commerce. Not about retail media, but about commerce, the underpinning of the performance of retail media.
What's one big thing, such as?
We didn't understand the influence of price to the degree that it would play out. We knew it was important, but we didn't understand, how important and how those models would have to be constructed and what a big lift that was going to be. We didn't understand how much people were either in store and buying on Amazon and vice versa, right? And so there were a lot of things that we just didn't anticipate. We thought they'd be. We just came in with our old mindset, from doing this with display and CTV, and we got our clock cleaned, right? We had to learn a lot. And fortunately, there were a lot of really smart commerce professionals from Tradeswell that we turned into Incremental, who got together with us, and we sort of shared notes. On the other side, I was absolutely astounded that they never took into any consideration any other media investment except for retail media when measuring retail media. That was on the other side of the coin. That's like mind-boggling to me. So
what about cross-platform consistency? How do you maintain it in your measurements?
What do you mean? So you mean because you're talking about like you're measuring Instacart and you're measuring Amazon and
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so first let's just say there's none. That's one of the problems we went to, like you got even weighting on Instacart, you got last view click Amazon, right? So even when you're looking at your reporting, if you don't have a solution like ours, you're looking at apples and boulders, basically. So we do use econometrics at the top to layer down and normalize everything out and lay on top of it. And then we use incrementality testing and synthetic testing to get a sense of causality within those models. And so what we do is we assign our own metric that is assigned consistently using the same consistent methodology across all media investments and exposures that we measure. We call that IROI, it's incremental return on investment. But we also put that next to, we pull out the marketplace in the RMN's reporting too, and we expose that to you so you can hop back and forth between the two. So that's how we
I want to rewind a little bit. Where did your saga begin? Are there any early plot twists that set the stage for who you are today?
Early plot twist. So I was a VP like 3.5 years in. My earnings had doubled every 6 months. I had been promoted every 6 months, and the dot-com bubble burst. My mom had just informed me she wouldn't lend me money for my rent, but she told me how much she would rent me my own room for. And the local liquor store, I was a finalist for assistant manager of the local liquor store. And that was the dot-com bubble burst. And I lived through it. And that awareness of how fast things can change and how not special I was. Because if you were born when I was born in 96, and you went into digital advertising, back then we called it internet advertising, right? If you went into that, it was impossible to do poorly, right? And so having that humility and begging for a job and ultimately getting a job for like 68% of what I had been earning the previous year, I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think that changed a lot because it opened me up to learning, and that replaced a lot of self-congratulating. So I think that was pivotal in my career early on. Thankful.
Throwing a curveball here. If you could pick 3 leaders to dine with, dead or alive, who would be at your table?
That's hard. I'm sorry. Am I allowed to swear on this? Shouldn't have had me.
Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that.
I can put a bleeper on it or whatever. Or just leave it.
Or just cut it. I'll just, I'll say it again.
Yeah, I try not to cut things. It's funnier this way. And then then the reels are funnier too. I can put together people swearing.
Great. Oh no. Gosh, 3 leaders. I would love to have dinner with Winston Churchill because I read his quotes and I love them, and he's fascinating, and I do believe history's version of him, effectively realizing that, look, I don't care what the popular opinion is here. This is what we're up against, and we have to stick to it. And I love the things that he did to pull things off, right? So I'm a huge fan of the idea of that. I'm trying to think of ones that aren't just like signals of wonderfulness, but who I truly would want to have dinner with.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, gosh.
That's okay. So speaking of leadership styles, How has your leadership style evolved as you scaled companies from modest millions to billions?
The hardest part was going back and doing it again. So I think the biggest thing is my leadership style evolved the most when I first went out and tried to do a startup and failed. And I gained a massive appreciation for how hard it is to do every single job in the company, how much harder than I ever anticipated. And I think I brought that forward when I went back into a more established company. And here, I think the best thing that I've done is assemble a team that doesn't need my leadership per se, right? They work incredibly well together. They're incredibly smart. They're collaborative. So a big part of my leadership skill is getting out of their way, right? When they're doing good work. And I think that at a large company, you don't do that. You know, everything's so operationalized and process oriented. You have to stay in it. But at a small company, when you see something good go and you go, that ain't broke. You guys got it. I trust you. And you move to the next thing. And that was hard at first, and it feels awesome now. Right. So
That's great. Innovation isn't just a buzzword in your playbook. How do you keep the creative fires burning within your team?
it's a startup. We confront unexpected challenges all the time that require innovation to get us through. Right. So I don't necessarily have to encourage that now. I think when we get much larger, that might be a problem. But
how do you handle flops?
this is, it's funny. This won't be the company you think you'd pull from, but I loved it. One of the first major deals I did as a seller was with Capital One.
Right.
Boy, did we fail to drive the results that they expected. And I went down tail between my legs. I had our head of data science, who I adore, a guy named Leon Zemmel, and I had this other guy, Dave Skinner, with me, and we went down ready to take our lashings. And we realized they weren't just being nice. It was a success. They had learned everything that they wanted to learn. And so the failure was a success because it had been set up in such a way that they garnered the learnings that they wanted. They actually did more business with us. And so for me, I don't mind a mistake. I don't mind a flop. And I don't mind an unexpected flop that you didn't measure well. Sometimes they happen. But I do mind when you had a chance to anticipate a positive or a negative outcome and you haven't figured out what you're going to learn from either outcome ahead of time and set yourself up to gather those learnings. And so you handle flops, great, but you really better be able to articulate what you learned from it. That's how I handle it.
What do you think is like the hardest decision you've had to make in the last few years, business-wise?
In the last few years, the hardest decision I've had to make. When I got here, I had to do layoffs.
Is that always hard for you?
Yeah, and it always will be. And honestly, I wondered if it disqualified me as startup CEO, because it was so hard. And every book you read and everything is hire fast, fire fast. But like my mentors, like a guy like John Nardone from X+1. One of John's magic skills was that...
I think you're like this. You're like the second or third person who's mentioned John Cardone as their mentor.
Well, I'm telling you, he really, he taught me that somebody not performing in a job might just be in the wrong seat in the bus.
Right.
Right. And he invested in raising us, and he had loyalty, and we didn't look over our shoulders. And I've worked in organizations where you're looking over your shoulders. It consumes a lot of your energy, right? It's like throwing away 30% of the battery. And so that was hard. It was really hard to do. And it was hard that it was hard, right? And I worried about that because it was 2 weeks into taking over this role. So it just put a lot of self-doubt. But we got through it, and we've got a killer team now, and we don't really experience attrition, and it's been pretty awesome. So it worked out.
So before we go, I like to ask everybody if you could send yourself a time-traveling text message to yourself when you started in the industry, what piece of advice would you give yourself, and would you actually listen to yourself?
Well, I definitely wouldn't listen to myself because I was one cocky little guy when I came out.
Weren't we all?
If I could give myself...
As you mentioned, it was so easy in the 90s to be cocky. Late 90s.
Dude, the first 2 companies I worked at IPO'd.
Right?
Both within like a year and a half of me joining. I was like, this stuff's easy.
Well, the first company I worked for was bought by a public company. And I was just out of college. I was like, I am like the king of media.
Yeah, at that point. Money, right? Yeah. If I could give it to myself, it would be that relationships are more important than near-term performance. I think early on, I sacrificed some great relationships and some people I could have learned a lot for and relied on later in life for near-term job performance. And I regret that.
And that's all for today's mind-bending exploration of media metrics and advertising incrementality on the Adonit Show. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Troutman Amin LLP, Legal Eagles, who navigate the murky waters of law with finesse and a touch of swagger. Special thanks to David Pollet for unraveling the mysteries of outdated metrics, AI, and e-commerce with insights sharper than a freshly honed machete. Because in the wild world of advertising, understanding impact is like mastering the art of parallel parking, essential, precise, and occasionally surprising. So stay curious, stay bold, and know more than you did yesterday.